Guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in this video we are going to continue with building our backend system for our job board application, right? So in this video we are going to be dealing with the vacancy schema, right? So as you can see from the vacancy schema, it's going to have the ID, a description, requirements, skill tags, experience, salary, and then benefits. And also we also have company, right? We also need the company ID so that we can know which company uploaded this vacancy, right? We also have the category, also category ID, so that we would know which category does the vacancy belong to, right? So without wasting much of the time, let's start building our backend, right? Right, so the first thing that I'm just going to do is I'm just going to copy our category schema right here, and then inside our models folder I'm just going to create a folder called vacancy model.js. right, so I'm just going to paste it inside, right? And then I'm just going to change it to vacancy schema, and then let's change this item to vacancy, and then vacancy schema, right, like this, right? So for the vacancy schema we need a title. For the vacancy we need a title. We also need a description, right? Also need a description, which is going to be the vacancy description, right? So it's going to be of type string. And then we also need requirements, right? Requirements, and then we also need a salary, right? We also need a salary. We also need a salary. The type is going to be number. And then yes, the salary is required. And then we also need benefits. Okay, benefits. And then we also need a reference to our category schema, right? So it's going to be category, and then the type is going to be mongoose.schema. In this we are just telling us mongoose that we want a schema dot types dot object ID, right? And then yes, required must be equal to true, and then it must refer to our category. So the reference is going to be the category schema, right? The reference is going to be the category schema, which is here, our category right here. So that's going to be a reference. So if you have worked with SQL before, just know that this is more of like a foreign key, right? It's more of like a foreign key, right? And then the next one is going to be company. Company type is going to be mongoose.schema dot types dot object ID, right? Required, yes, it must be set to true. And then the reference, in this case, our reference in this case, we need a company model, right? So let's go to our company model. So reference, we are referencing this company right here. Okay, so let's just go there. Let's just put it there. Right. Okay, so now that we are done with this part, let's then change this to vacancy ID. To vacancy ID, and then everything else is okay, right? So now the next is we need to now start working on the controller, right? We need to start working on the vacancy controller. So first we need to get the vacancy model. And then we need a vacancy model right there, right? And then so let's just make sure that we'll be exporting the functions that we'll be creating here, right? So the first function is going to be create vacancy. So first we need to destructure the title, description, category, salary, right? Which is, we need to make sure we are destructuring, which is going to come from the request.body, right? And then we are simply going to check if we don't have a title, if we don't have a description, and we don't have a category, and also if category, and also if we don't have like a salary, right? So, and then response.status, right? 400.json, and then let's just make sure that status is equal to true, and then the message must be you have a missing field. Okay, and then let's use a try catch block, right? So new vacancy is equal to new vacancy model, and then we pass on the request.body. And then we are just going to await new vacancy.save, right? We are saving it into our database, right? And then you just 201 status code to show that vacancy created successfully, right? And then we need to catch we need to catch any error. So we need to catch an error. We're going to res.status 500, and then we need to display the error.message, right? And then now the next method is for searching for vacancies, right? So we forgot something. Before we search for vacancies, we need an index, right? So if we go to our vacancy schema, right, we are just going to create an index. So that's going to be vacancy schema dot index, right? So this index is going to take a look at we need a title, right? Use of type text, and then we also need a description, which is of type text also, right? So we need this index right here for what? For searching for items in our MongoDB database, right? So now let's go back to our vacancy controller, and then let's start working on the search method, right? Search vacancy method, right? So it's going to be search vacancy. I think I'm taking a request response, right? Then what we are simply going to do is we need to a query, because we need to get a query which is goes to request.query. Okay, it's supposed to be curly brackets, not square brackets, right? Right, like this, right? And then we are going to just check if not query, right? So if there is no query, right, what we are just going to do is we are just going to display a message that query parameters are required. Query parameter is required, right? Like this, right? And then if we have the query, we are just going to wrap around in a try catch block. Now we need to get the results. So the results are going to be equal to await vacancy model dot find, right? So we need to find text with also a search parameter which is equal to query. Okay, like this, right? Now the next thing that we need to do is we just need to display those results, right? Response.json, and then we pass in the results. Response.json message, and then we display the results, right? Like this, right? And then we need to catch an error. So we need to catch an error, which is response.status code 500, right? If we have any error, right? So that's it for the search method. Now we need to go on to the next method, which is for getting all the vacancies, right? Get all vacancies. right? So going to vacancy model dot find, right? We are going to find the vacancies right by title. So we are just simply going to find the vacancies, right, like this. And then also we also need to populate, right? So we also need to populate with the company information, right? Path. The path is going to be the company schema, right? And then we are going to populate using what we are going to populate it. We are going to populate using the following fields. So you name and then space address and then space logo and then space phone number and then space and then email, right? So those are the values that we want to populate with our vacancy. And we also need to populate also with category, right? So the path category, and then select, right? We're going to image and then title, right? So those are the values that we need. And then after this, what we simply need to do is we need to return a response.status code 200, right? With the vacancies, right? With the vacancies, okay. So here, let's just return the results without like this, right? Right, so now we are done. Now we need to just catch the errors. Okay, so status code 500, we are done with this. I think it's because we are missing another curly bracket here, right? And then the next method is we need to get vacancies by ID, right? So we need to get vacancies by ID, get vacancies by ID. Request response, right? Get vacancies by ID. So we need to get an ID from request.parameters, right? Request.parameters.id, like this, right? And then try catch block, right? So constant vacancy is equal to await. So vacancy model dot find by ID, right? And then we simply need to just pass in the ID like this, right? And then we also need to populate the category, right? So we just copy this right here. I think we also need to populate also the company also, right? So right. Okay, so now that we are done with the vacancy part, what we just simply have to do after this is response.status response.status 200, and then we need to just pass in the vacancies. And then we just need to pass in the vacancy like this, and then we need to catch the error, right? Any error that appears here, we just need simply have to catch it, right? All right, now that we are done, The next one that we are going to use is get vacancy by category. Get vacancy by category, right? Like this, get vacancy by category. And then we should make sure that ID is equals to request.params ID, right? And then let's use a try catch block, right? So we need to get the vacancies, right? Vacancies vacancy model find, and then here for the category, right? The category, we just want to retrieve it. We just want to retrieve a vacancy that belongs to this category, right? Remember, in our vacancy schema, right, we reference this category here field. So if we pass in the category ID here, it should return to us a vacancy that belongs to vacancies that belong to certain category, right? And then what we are after we are done with this, we also need to populate this vacancy with also. So let me just copy this and then let's populate. Okay, so now that we are done, so let's just have response dot status 200, and then we pass in the vacancies, right? And then now we need to catch the error, right? Like this, right? And then we just display response status code 500, right? And then the last method, right, that we need is filter vacancy, because we need to filter the vacancies, right? Filter vacancy. So first we need try catch block, right? Try catch block. Okay, so let's just catch the error first. Okay, right. And then what we need to do is, let's just create a variable. We need to filter by title, minimum salary, right? Filter by the minimum salary, maximum salary, and also we can also filter by the requirements, but let's just leave it. Let's just use the title, minimum salary and maximum salary. So this is going to come from the request.query, right? Going to come from a request.query, and then I'll just make sure let filter, right, equal to empty set, right? So if we have the title, right, if we have the title, and then filter.title, this goes to a new regular expression, right, like this, right? And then now we need to take care. So if we have any of the minimum salary, right, or the maximum salary, right, if we have any of those values, right, what we are simply going to do is filter put salary is equals to, because we need to, and then we are just going to check if minimum salary is greater than or equal to, right, is greater than or equal to, and then we just pass an integer here, let's just pass a float, and then it's going to be minimum salary, right? Same for the maximum salary, right, like this, right? And then after we're done with this, what we are simply going to do is we're just going to say the vacancies is equal to vacancy dot find, and then we pass in our filter here that will contain our variables. And then after this, what we're just going to do is response dot status, and then we just return the vacancies like this, right? So now we have our vacancy controller. From this vacancy controller, you can see we have this method for creating our vacancy, right? This method for creating our vacancy. So we just use the save function to save our vacancy to our MongoDB database. And then we have this search vacancy, right? The search vacancy, where we first check if we have a query. If we don't have a query, then it will just display this error that a query parameter is required, right? And then we have the results, right? And then to get the results, we are just going to find by our query function, and then we'll display the results, right? And then we also have this get all vacancies method that's going to get all the vacancies that we have in our databases. And then we also have this method get vacancies by category, which is going to just retrieve our vacancies by category. And then we have the filter vacancy, right? Okay, so now that we are done, let's move on to the route, right? So it's going to be a vacancy route.js, right? So this, we need to the first thing that we need to do is we need to initialize the router, right, which is going to come from express require express, right, and then router, and then our router is going to just come from express require express, right? And then we also need to initialize the vacancy controller, right? Vacancy controller, which is going to come from controller, then vacancy controller, right? So the first we are just going to router.post, right? The post function, since we are going to post, it's going to come from vacancy controller dot create vacancy, since we are just going to create a vacancy. And then the other one is for getting the vacancies, right? The one is creating for vacancies, the other one is to get the vacancy by ID, and then the other one is for searching, right? So it's going to be router dot get, and then / search, and then vacancy controller dot search vacancy, right? And then the other one is for is for filtering the vacancies, right? Filter, which is going to come from vacancy controller dot filter vacancy, right? And then the other one is for getting a vacancy by category, right? So this one, vacancy by category, and then ID, and then it's going to be vacancy controller dot get vacancy by category, right? So we are done with. So what we just need to do is we just need to export module.export, module.exports is go to router like this, right? So now we are done with this. We are done with this section here. So let's go into our server. And then what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to get this from, let's get this from a vacancy route, the vacancy route. Vacancy route. Vacancy route, and then let's just pass it here. Okay. All right. API, and then vacancies, right? So now what we just need to do is to run our backend and then test our API. So it seems as if we have an error. npm start. Saying route.get requires a callback function. Routes. Where is it? Saying it requires route.get. So now let's test our API. So the error was coming from that. It was coming because the name of the get all vacancies and get vacancies by ID were wrong. That's why it was giving us an error, right? So now that our API is running, so let's start testing it using Postman, right? So I'm just going to bring out Postman here. So already have this URL localhost 6030 API vacancies, right? Then we have the title, description, requirements, skill tags. Let me check if we had skill tags in our vacancy schema. All right. So let's check vacancy, and then I forgot the skill. So we also need the skill tags, right? So skill tags. The type is going to be an array. Type array. And then required true. Okay, so now that we are done with our schema, okay, so let's start it, let's try to run it. All right, so we need to get the categories first. So because we need the category ID, categories like this. All right, so let's copy this category ID because we need it. Go back to our vacancies, and then just paste it there. And then we also need our company ID, right? Login company. I think we used this one the last time. So what's the body? I don't know why it's not giving us a response. Okay, everything is okay. Cancel. Let's try again. So let me check. Maybe it might be due to company route. Okay, it's supposed to be log in company, right? So let's restart our server. Okay, it's okay like this, right? So under routes company, let's just log in company. Let's just copy it, and then let's just use this one right there. Okay, let's paste it and then let's send it. Why is it confusing? Okay, so now we have the company ID here. So let's copy that company ID and then let's go to vacancies. Let's paste it under vacancies right there. Right, so let's try to create a vacancy. Post, it's a post request. Status false. Validation failed. Salary. Okay, so for the salary part, okay, so for the salary part, I think we made it's a number, so we're not supposed to include any integers, right? So 3,500 like this. Let's send it. So vacancy created successfully. Let's try to get it. The vacancy cannot populate company because it is not in your schema. Right, so let's check our company schema. There might be something going on here. So it's company model. Yeah, we have this one, company. Copy. Let's go to our vacancy controller because they're saying it's not. Get vacancies. Company. It's supposed to be small letter. Right, so now let's just restart our DB lesson. Alright, let's see. Yeah, now we are getting our vacancy, and also we're also getting like the company, and also we are also getting like the vacancy ID, right? So now what we want to do is we also want to get a vacancy by category, right? So let's go to vacancy route and then vacancy by category. Copy. Let's go inside our post main right here. Right, vacancy by category, and then we need to provide the category ID. Right, let's copy the category ID. Let's paste it here. Let's get. Yeah, as you can see, we are still getting it, and then now we need also to search a vacancy, right? We also need to search, and then we need to provide a query. Then query is equals to let's just say Node.js. Let's see. It's saying null. Right, so vacancy controller, search, get off vacancies, search, query, we need to provide a query. Okay, so it's saying Node.js. So let's say developer, like this. So it's giving us a null. I think it's because some of this doesn't exist, or there might be a typo somewhere. Search query Node.js. Okay. Okay. So okay, let's also populate. Let's so create post request. Why is okay, it's because we need to ensure it's vacancies. The black key. I think we put title to be unique. So let's go back to our vacancy. Yeah, the title must not be unique. Right, title must not be unique because a vacancy can have like similar title, right? So let's try to restart our server. Let's try to run it. Let's try to post. Quite true. Okay, so let's try to get the vacancies. All right, by Node.js developer like this. Then I think we might have made a typo somewhere. Quite is equals to true unique, so it's okay. Let's change it to Express. Post. Okay, we've created the vacancy. Now you can see we have 2 vacancies now. Okay, so that was it, guys. I